Hey beautiful people, welcome back to a new video on our channel Read Travel Become. In this video, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite genres of reading. These days, I have actually found out the kind of books that excite me the most. The genre is narrative non-fiction. So it's basically non-fiction books that read like a novel. Basically, there might be some events that happen in the history. It might be a memoir. It might be some event around which a narrative is written. Some event or some historic, any kind of a disaster, any kind of some sort of geographical or any history which is written absolutely like maybe a thriller novel. I'm really interested in these kind of novels, and I'm happy to share them with you guys. You would love these recommendations, and if you want to get into the habit of reading non-fiction. I know reading regular non-fiction feels kind of boring because they say the same thing, but if you truly want to learn about something, narrative non-fiction is a great way to learn things because you can actually experience different perspectives. These are actual people, the stories happen in real time, and I remember when I started reading, I was really enthralled by all of these books, and over the years I've read more and more of these, and in this video I'm going to recommend some gold recommendations when it comes to narrative non-fiction. So make sure you watch the video till the end. You may never know which thought or fact may resonate with you and change the course of your life. So let's get started. So the first recommendation on this list is Dead Wake by Erik Larson. He's the same writer who wrote Devil in the White City. You can also read that book. I'm going to explain what this book is about and also that book. Dead Wake is about a ship. It was a passenger ship, a very grand, lavish, Titanic-like ship. During the World War I, this ship had sailed. This was a British ship, and it was supposed to sail from one of the British islands. Now, during World War I, Germany had declared those international British waters as a war zone, and they had already declared that any ship which will come here, any passenger ship or any kind of movement which they see, the German spy boats, which are called as U-boats, they can intercept these boats and anything can happen. They had already warned. But this ship still sailed, and it was full of people. There were like thousands of passengers on board. There were some very important people on board, and apparently there were spies in this boat, and there's a lot of double cross happening between the Germans and the British intelligence. So still, this boat experienced a disaster. You can read about this particular incident. The boat was called Lusitania, and this is a very famous disaster. The boat was kind of shipwrecked in the middle of the German waters. What happened? What were the perspectives of people? How were these two factions fighting with each other? Forms the crux of this book. Again, it completely reads like a thriller novel. It completely reads like a fiction thriller in which there are multiple characters. Everybody has their own agenda, and it's just the pace is very good, and you actually learn a lot about how these Allied powers and how these Nazi powers used to think at that point of time. So great read. There's also a similar novel written by Erik Larson called Devil in the White City, which I have already recommended. That was about a famous historical event during which a Chicago fair was opened, and in this Chicago fair there was one of America's most notorious killers, and so half of the story is from his perspective and half of the story is from perspective of the architect of this Chicago fair. So how these two stories intertwined and what happened with the serial killer. He was in this fair, so was he successful or not? If you want to find out, you can read that book. Next on the list is On the Move by Oliver Sacks. This is not exactly a thriller or kind of a history novel. It's more of a memoir, but Oliver Sacks is one of those writers who thinks in narration, right? Who thinks in stories. That's why whatever he has to write, he always puts it forward in a form of a story. I'm greatly smitten by Oliver Sacks these days. I've been reading his other books like Awakenings, Musicophilia, and The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. And this book is his own story. Where was he born? How did he travel around? How was he interested in biochemistry, in regular chemistry, in history, music, arts, his personal relationships, his relationship with his parents, how he was a gifted artist, how he wrote his first book. All of these things are written in this book because they read like a story. That's why I love reading these kind of books. One of the reasons that I love Shoe Dog also is because it's a very narrative kind of a book, right? It sounds like a story to you. So that's why why again, this is also a great recommendation. I would suggest read about Oliver Sacks first, read some of his other books, and once you know him as a character, for example, if you have read Insomniac City by Bill Hayes, there's a lot of Oliver Sacks in there. If you know some context around him and then you read this book, it's a very, very fulfilling experience. I used to read this book every morning before starting work, and I had a great time. Like, he's a gifted writer. His thoughts are very original. He's one of those doctors who, whenever he's sharing something very scientific, he makes sure he's sharing it in the form of a story. All of his clinical trials, his relationship with his patients, he writes in the form of stories. So I love reading Oliver Sacks. So yeah, a very, very good recommendation. Next is, again, we come back to the Cold War, World War kind of an era. The book is The Spy and the Traitor by Ben McIntyre. Now, this is one of his books, but he has written more such books: A Spy Among Friends, Zigzag Agent, Operation Mincemeat. All of these books are real life stories of secret agents. Now, obviously everybody loves Ian Fleming's James Bond, but he's not real. In fact, he was inspired by real life spies, and Ben McIntyre will actually tell you about those real life spies. There were countless spies, and the spies that he has chosen to write about, they have extraordinary stories, right? They were double agents, like no government knew what exactly these guys were doing, and Ben has written all of these books in the form of extremely exciting, like a James Bond movie, right? You would never feel that you are actually reading about real life events. You won't feel like you're reading a non-fiction novel. So that's the crux of Ben McIntyre's books. He himself is an investigative journalist. He has first-hand accounts, interviews with these people, and he has actually formed a narrative around all of these events that were taking place in world history, in the World War history especially during Cold War, if we have to boil down to that. So if you're interested in this space, do pick up any of Ben McIntyre's book. Many of his books also have been adapted into movies. If you know the movie Operation Mincemeat, which was one of the greatest deceptions MI, British intelligence, played on the German counterparts, there's a Netflix movie on it. It's again based on the book called Operation Mincemeat. I don't know, these days I'm really interested in these things because it's better than fiction, you know. Sometimes I think that these events that have occurred, they are so, you say reality is stranger than fiction, right? These books definitely make you feel that they have been experienced in the same way as a really good fiction book. So yeah, definitely try to pick up these books. The next book on the list is The Wager by David Gran. Again, a very, very pacey non-fiction book. He's the same writer who has written Killers of the Flower Moon, which is made into a movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro. You can read any of these books. Both are very pacey and they cover a very important part of history. Wager is about a ship, a dilapidated ship. This particular ship was found on the Brazilian coast, and it was all like broken and shipwrecked. And when these people on the island went into the ship, there were 300 men inside who were almost dead. They were celebrated as heroes. But when people started deep diving, there was a trial around it. They found out it was a complex web of events which led to this ship journey. I don't know why these books. So the book follows the trial. The book follows why these people set out. Who are these people? Apparently they were in search of a treasure which you should read about, and what happens next, how governments were involved, how different nationalities were involved, forms the crux of this book. Again, reads like a thriller novel. You'd get to learn a lot about history, and I feel narrative non-fiction books are one of those books, right, where because you read them like a fiction book, they stay with you more. If you're reading them like history, if you're reading about specific events, you would forget them. But when you read it in the form of a story, right, when you remember one particular event, so suddenly the whole story comes to you in bits and pieces. So you can actually, when you're having conversations with people, it really is a great place to talk about these because A, they are real and they are very relevant, and B, you can remember them while you are conversating because the story is playing in the back of your mind. You can actually talk about these things with people when you're conversating. So these are great talking points when you go to talk to people. If you're reading narrative non-fiction, little incidents here and there sound very fantastical. These can be great, just quick facts which you're sharing with people, and it starts a whole conversation. Especially around World War, it's a very complex discussion and it just can go into so many ways. So yeah, that's why I love this particular space. These days I'm reading a lot of these books. I'm really interested. So you can try with me. You can definitely pick up books books. Let me know in the comment section whatever books you guys are reading. And the last book on this list is a very entertaining non-fiction book. It's called My Friend Anna, written by Rachel Williams, who was Anna's friend. Now, who was Anna? Anna is Anna Delvey, on whom the Netflix show Inventing Anna is based. She was a 20-something teenager who came to New York, who entered the fashion scene of New York, who were like extremely rich, inner circles of Manhattan. She found herself in those groups. She faked being a German heiress. She told that she is like an heiress, she's like a lady of some German province, whatever, she's royalty, and she got into this group and she showed that she had a lot of money, she is royalty and she's this, she's that. She raised a lot of money, millions of dollars. She conned all of those people who were in high fashion. So it's the story of her. The show is also entertaining. I don't know what exactly happened. The show is told in a specific way. This book is told by her friend. If you've seen the show, in the show as well, there is a particular trip which these guys take to Marrakesh, to Morocco, and there they extravagantly spend a lot of money, but Anna is supposed to pay that money, but she does not pay, saying that she'll pay it later or her bank is not accepting or whatever. Then her friends started learning more and more. She started spying on Anna, she started researching more on Anna, and then she found out from her perspective of who Anna actually was, that she was a Russian and not a German, and she was not high royalty and all of those things. But the way Anna has conned all of these people tells you a lot about society, that how rich people are perceived, how royalty is perceived, and if you just walk the talk, you can actually con a lot of people. How showing without any proof, people just assume she was royalty, right? Just the way she talked, just the way she, presented herself. So this story is about that. But again, this book is just one part of it. It's not the whole story. So if you want to read a one-sided perspective of Anna, this is a great starting point. And yeah, it's a good book. I wouldn't say it's the best, but it's a good read. And definitely, if you like fiction books, you can definitely pick up this book as well. And the last book on this list is a book which I have recommended multiple times because it's one of my favorites in this space. It's called Into Thin Air by John Crocker. I remember when I first started YouTube, one of my first bookish recommendation videos where I had recommended this book, and a lot of people had told me that yeah, this book is a really nice book. It's about an Everest expedition that happened in the mid-19, I don't remember the dates exactly, but somewhere in the 1900s. And John Crocker was in this expedition. It was one of the worst Everest disasters. When these guys were climbing Mount Everest, there was a disaster which happened, and how these people survived forms the crux of the book. John Crocker has written Everest in a very different way. For most people, it's just a mountain, but for mountaineers who are extremely passionate about climbing the Mount Everest, it's very spiritual to them, literally being on top of the world. So the way he writes about Everest is very fascinating. You actually wear his own shoes when you're reading the novel, because when you're reading the book, because you experience all of the hardships that this crew of mountaineers is experiencing, and just the events that happen, the different characters, the real life characters, some of whom who died in that expedition are talked about in this particular book. So yeah, a really good recommendation. So that was my list, guys. Please let me know in the comment section if you know of a good non-fiction narrative kind of a recommendation. I would love to know some great books in this space. And yeah, that was the video. Thank you so much for watching this video till here. If you found any value in this, video, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for future content which is coming up. And yeah, thank you so much. That's all for this one. See you in the next video. Bye bye.